Notice that the web address is just simpletax.ca. You'll get set up. You're going to do a personal return. So we're doing a personal return today for Sally Blogger. So I have some information set up. Obviously, I have a dummy SIN number put in there just because Sally's not a real person and we don't actually want to use somebody's real SIN number. So the first few screens that you're going to see are going to be purely informational. So it's going to have information about your name, your date of birth, your mailing address. So I've said for the purposes of this example, Sally lives in Alberta. You obviously probably live in a different province. So you would just make sure that you pick the correct province for yourself, as that does have an impact on the income tax amounts. It's also going to ask if you've moved provinces, the date of your move, where you came from, your current residence, your marital status. So Sally Blogger, for this example, she's going to be single. And then there's some Elections Canada questions. This is just so that should we have a federal election, you can get your election information in the mail because it integrates with CRA. So generally you're going to want to pick yes. It's also going to ask if this is your first time filing a tax return. Your principal residence is your house. So if you've sold your house in the year, you would need to indicate that. This other question is, so basically if you own property outside of Canada worth more than $100,000 Canadian, you need to pick yes. That does have tax implications. For the purposes of this, we're going to bypass that. And then what you can do is you can also request to get your notice of assessment through your CRA My account, as opposed to waiting to get it in the mail. If you do not have a CRA My account, I highly recommend signing up for it. It just keeps all of your information, all of your notice of assessments online. If you've ever been in a situation where you need to provide a notice of assessment, say in order to get a mortgage and you don't know where it is, having your CRA My account makes it really handy because all you do is just log in. So you're going to enter in your email address, check yes, and then here SimpleTax is going to ask if you want to set up your account. My recommendation is yes, because then you can have all your information saved year after year. I already have it set up for my personal account. So if I click anything, it'll log me into mine. So we're not going to set up an account for Sally. And this is really neat. So this autofill my return. If you have a CRA My account, slips, so your T4 from your employer, if you have investments or RRSP contributions, a lot of that gets filed online with the CRA. So what you can do is, if you have a My account, you would hit yes. And then what it's going to do is it's going to connect to the CRA and pull in all of that information. A warning, that may not be all of your slips, so definitely don't just blast past once you've done that. It's always worth it to see what gets input from the CRA My account and then double check with the T-slips that you have. For me, it just saves time entering information into boxes. So if you can save a couple minutes while filing your tax return, good job. All right, so now this is when you start filing your taxes. And if you notice when you're scrolling through here, they're pretty funny. They're nerdy accountants just like myself, and I say that in love. So now for the fun part. So I've already pre-populated this information here on the side, you can see. But if you don't know what you need, you can actually search for it. So T4 slips, that's your employment income that you're going to get from your employer. I've also decided that Sally has RSP contributions, some medical expenses, monthly bus passes. There's certain requirements that you have to meet in order to be able to deduct any sort of public transit amounts. I will include a link to that in the show notes and in the blog post to help you out. So Sally is a blogger, obviously. That's why we're doing this. So she does have business income. And so the form that you need for the business income is a T2125. So if I type in T2125 in that box, it brings it up. And if I click on it, it's going to populate it. I already have one populated, so we don't need to add a second one. If you have two businesses, so for example, maybe you run a blog and you're a personal trainer and your personal training is contract work, then you would need to have two business income sections. And Sally, like most of us, also has student loan interest, which is deductible for taxes. So we're going to go through and we are just going to fill out her return. To be honest, I kind of joke that a tax return is kind of like paint by numbers, because everything has corresponding boxes. So what I did is I went and we have an example T4 statement that we're going to use just to fill it in here for Sally. Or not. Okay, here we go. So I've put Sally in Alberta. This is Ontario. So there's going to be some tax differences. So what we're going to do is here's box 14 on the T4 slip, which is $51,236. So we're going to go to the tax software, right in $51,236. So I don't know, let's call this blogger business because maybe Sally is employed and also runs business. So you'll notice right away, as soon as I put in her employment income, it said that there's an amount owing, merely because we haven't finished filling this out. So let's finish here. So box 22 is 12,555. I'm just going to finish. As you can see, it's absolutely riveting. So we just want to take a look. All right, so we have two more boxes. We have box 34 and box 40. So you can see that there's no 34 or 40 here. So we're going to add, say 34. Let's type in 12365. And then we also have a box 40. And you'll notice when you type it in, it says what it was. So this is an amount, your other taxable allowances and benefits included on your T4. So that's actually potentially the employer paying for food, meals, whatever. So there we go. Took a couple of minutes. We just input everything from the box numbers as noted on the T4 into the return. And you'll notice that on the side here, this refund or amount owing is going to update as we go through. So next here, we have RSP contributions. So the maximum that you can contribute to your RSP at any one time is 18% of your earned income. So regardless of what Sally makes from her blog, she can only contribute 18% of this $51,000 into her RRSP. I'm going to get into that a little bit more on how you might want to structure your contributions in another blog post because it can get a little bit complex. But just know that if you over contribute, there might be penalties. So yes, Sally made a contribution. And then what's going to pop up is your 2016 RRSP deduction limit. So if you have your CRA My account, you can log online and find that online because it's on your notice of assessment every year. I actually have an example of what that will look like. It's a little small. It's from 2008. It doesn't matter so much. The 18% of the earned income, you'll notice that's there. So for the example of this, we're just going to show that it's kind of just a running total. So it's going to be your prior year less any contributions plus what you're allowed to contribute in the current year. So we're not going to give Sally a $58,000 contribution limit. We're just going to be nice and easy. We're going to give a round number. We're going to say that she's really great. She's putting in lots of contributions. So her deduction limit for 2016 is $15,000, which means that she can't contribute more than that. Now, if you're doing math, you'll notice that her 18% of income limit is $9,000. So you can actually, if you're not contributing the maximum, you don't lose it, it rolls forward. Also, your RRSP, you can contribute in the first 60 days of the year. So this is if you know that you're going to owe taxes, what you can always do is make a contribution prior to March 1st of 2017, which is already passed. So this may not help you this year, but is something to keep in mind for the next year. So we're just going to say that if this is for 2016, We're going to say that she contributes through Sun Life, and she contributed $5,000. All right, and again, you'll notice her income went up because RRSP contributions are non-taxable, so it's typically will result in a refund. You can also use your RSP account for certain things like tuition and buying a home. That's going to be out of the scope of what we're doing today. So now we're going to go to medical expenses. And this is really important. So what this will do is it's going to update as you enter in your tax information. So if you aren't sure if you have sufficient medical expenses to claim on your return, I would recommend adding in this form, entering in your T4 information, and then it's going to tell you what they need to be in order to impact your return. So Sally needs to have almost $1,400 worth of medical expenses in order to be able to receive any sort of, tax benefit. So if we put $500 in here, regular expense, you'll notice that it doesn't impact the refund because it's not a large enough expense. There's also, you'll notice that there's eligible medical expenses. If you click on this link, it's going to tell you what those are, takes you to the CRA website. Okay? And then you'll notice that the eligible medical expenses can be paid in any 12-month period ending in 2016 that you've not claimed for 2015. So it doesn't have to be a December 31st year end. So for this, Sally only has $500 worth of medical expenses. It doesn't impact her return, so we can just go ahead and delete that form. Public transit amount. So again, this has to do with the eligible passes, which is the monthly bus pass. So you can claim a short-term pass. This is really important. If you have unlimited travel for 5 consecutive days, and you must be traveling for at least 20 days in any 28-day period. Really, you're going to want to make sure that you have a monthly bus pass, or if electronic payment cards, I know are big in Toronto and Vancouver is making a move to use those as well. So you need to make basically a trip every day plus one, and you need to be able to get a receipt. So you would just use that amount. So we're just going to say this is Calgary Transit. And a bus pass in Calgary is something like $85 a month. Maybe Sally needs to take the bus to and from work every day for the year. So 85 times 12 is just over 1,000. Woohoo, look at her return there. And now this is why you're here. This is the big thing. This is how to do your statement of business activities. So we're going to call this Sally's blog. Sally's blog is in Alberta. It's really important to put in the province because, again, that impacts your taxes. No, this was not her last year of business. That's important just in case you're winding up your business. They need to know that. And I neglected to write this down, but I do know that it is independent writers and authors is the closest thing to a blog. So this is the industry code that you need. So if you have more than one website, you're going to need to indicate that. Sally only has one website, and you need to give the CRA your web address on your return. So you can just type it in. And now this is where you enter in your business income and expenses. So I've created this spreadsheet here, which has Sally's income and expenses. This amount right here is her total income amount. And that's the only amount the CRA wants. They don't actually need the monthly or the type of breakdown for your income. So we're just going to enter in $81.85 on her gross sales commissions. And you'll notice that it asks about GST here. Again, we're going to deal with that in a different blog post just because it's a little bit complicated. The reserves, you can just skip on. It's not going to be applicable for you. And inventory, we're bloggers. We don't really sell a product. If you do sell a product, you do need to fill this out. And if you do need assistance filling this out, you can always just contact me, shoot me an email. You can find my contact information on accountingforbloggers.ca and just shoot me a note from there. So now we need to fill out the business part of expenses, which I've set up here. So what I've done is on this Excel sheet, which I will have downloadable for you, I have all of the different categories set by the CRA, the amounts, and the totals. And again, CRA only wants the totals. Advertising, for example, that could do with, sponsoring a post on Facebook, promoting something on Instagram, that kind of stuff. So let's just say that Sally has a budget and she spent almost $500 doing that. And now meals and entertainment, this is the tricky one. So this says allowable part only. Well, what does that mean? That means that you can only deduct 50%. So if you go out for dinner that's business blog related and your bill is $50, you can then only deduct $25 of it. It's a blanket CRA requirement that it can only be at 50%. So let's just assume that we've already considered this. This is all at 50% of the total cost for a few dinners through the year. So that's $279. A lot of these specific categories I've already talked about on Accounting for Bloggers. So if you want a rundown or a definition of what each of them entail, you can check out over there. Or if you're not sure where to classify something when you're doing your taxes, again, you can use Accounting for Bloggers and send me a note. Just because if I went through every possible thing that could be included in this video would get way too long and you might be bored already. So we're just going to finish filling this out. Office expense, is probably going to be the largest expense that you have. It's pretty all-encompassing. This doesn't need to mean if you have an office. It's kind of just the expenses that you need to incur to run your business that are not included in any of these other areas. I just made it really easy. I used round numbers here. So for office expense, we're going to call it $1,800. And so now rent. You'll notice when I click in this field, it says do not enter the rent you pay for your home in this field. Use the other expenses field under business use of home instead. So this rent field is if you rent a building or a room or something specifically for your business. Some bloggers do that. I would wager that the majority of bloggers, we all, just work out of our home. So we are going to walk through how to use the business use of home area once we finish filling out this form. So I've left most of these blank. I've highlighted these in orange just because, again, they're probably not going to be applicable for you. It would take a lot of time to go through them. So let's just leave them, and if you have questions, please contact me. I've also left off telephone and utilities. That's something that will also be included in the business use of home section, because while you are using likely your cell phone and your internet for your business, you're not using it 100% of the time for your business, so we need to consider that. And then other expenses. Sally's a food blogger. She goes out, she reviews restaurants. Restaurant reviews are going to be 100% deductible, same as any sort of kitchen supplies that you need to purchase. CRA general rule is if something is less than $500 in cost, but is going to last you a number of years, you don't need to put it into a CCA class. We're going to talk about CCA in a minute. So let's just fill in this other expenses here of $4,200. And again, you'll notice this refund amount keeps changing. Mandatory questions for NetFile. In order to file your taxes online, there are certain questions that you have to answer. That's going to be a 0, pretty much guaranteed. Was tax withheld on the income you earned from this business? This is a sole proprietorship, so taxes are not going to be withheld on it, so you're going to say no. Now we're going to go over to capital cost allowance. So this is for the bigger ticket items. On this sheet, you'll see that I have a heading here called CCA. What I've done is I've assumed that in the year, Sally has purchased a laptop, a camera, and an iPhone. These are pretty big ticket items. They're going to last more than a year, but not a super long time. A camera is probably going to last quite a while. Laptops and iPhones generally have a little bit shorter of a life. CRA has decided that you get to deduct a portion of the cost of the asset that you purchased. It's decided by the CRA, like it or not, you kind of have to follow it. So we're going to go here and it's going to say, how would you like to report your CCA? So we're going to let it calculate it for us. So what we're going to do is we have 3 additions in the year. So we're adding equipment. I'm going to say that this is a laptop. A laptop is class 50. Total proceeds, so that's your total cost, was $1,500. And then it's going to calculate, so it's going to deduct $412, or you can select a different amount. We're going to add a row here for the iPhone or for the camera next. So the camera was, let's make that the right number. Camera is class 8 and it was $1,200. And then finally we have an iPhone. CCA can be pretty complicated. I'm going through this pretty quickly. So if you have questions, and you probably will have questions, please don't hesitate to contact me and ask these questions. The idea of CCA is such that you're going to have a longer life. We're trying to match the life of the asset over a period of years. So if you buy a laptop and it lasts you 5 years, expensing the full $850 in the first year doesn't really make sense, and that's what the CRA has decided. So you'll see that what it's decided is this is the amount. So what is that? $600 is being deducted. And again, if you sign up for a Simple Tax account, it's going to keep all of this information and do the calculations automatically for you next year. So if we scroll up here in this capital cost allowance field, it's input that $600 amount. And next, we're going to go to the fund business use of home. So I filled in a little bit of information here for you already. So we're going to assume that Sally has an apartment that's 1,000 square feet. And the room that we've designated for her blogging is 150 square feet. And again, because it's her home, she's not blogging 100% of the time or doing business 100% of the time. So we're going to say that it's 25% of the time. It's pretty hard to, get an exact estimate since a lot of us are at home doing home things and blog things at the same time. What I would do is do your best to track it for a little while just to determine what is a reasonable amount to claim. Definitely don't claim 100% because you're certainly not blogging 100% of your time when you're at home, because I assume that you also sleep there as well. Okay, so next, this is where we get to fill out all of this kind of stuff. So heating, we all pay for heat and electricity and all of that kind of jazz. So you do get to deduct a portion of it. So what you're going to want to do is make sure that you save your heating, electricity, and insurance bills so that you can claim them on your taxes. So here I'm just going to make a couple of quick assumptions. We're going to assume that the total heating cost per month is $60. We're just going to do the same for electricity. And then for insurance, $50 is generally pretty reasonable. And now we get to mortgage interest. So if you own your house and you are paying a mortgage, you can deduct the interest on that mortgage. If you are renting, you're going to put that rent number here. Other things, if you own your home and it is a condo, yes, you can include condo fees. Um, and what I would also do in this other expenses is this is where I would include your cable and internet. Maintenance is going to be for those items that are related, to your home. But again, if you're a food blogger and you need to buy a new stove, definitely include that. If you repaint your bathroom, likely not deductible. So we're going to say that Sally's mortgage interest was $8,000 this year. She also has property taxes, and then her cell phone and internet is $200 a month. So we just enter everything in here. These little question marks are going to give you little tips. So when you net file, you don't need to list what these other expenses are line by line. If you mail your return in, you probably need to. So this is the total of all of the home amounts is $14,000. And then $500 is what Sally is allowed to deduct that's related to the blog. So it's going to take 150 divided by 1,000 and 25% of that. So it's not generally a big number, but it does make an impact on your return. And then you'll notice it asks about capital cost allowance, which is what we calculated up here. So yes, you can take a deduction on your home. I strongly recommend that you absolutely do not do that. In Canada, when you sell your home, a lot of times you will make money on that. That's not taxable. The second you claim CCA on your home, you now have to pay taxes on the gain. So that's just a little bit of a tax tip there for you. I highly recommend that you don't do this. Again, questions on how to fill this out, because I have gone through it relatively quickly, please contact me. And there's a few other questions. Motor vehicle expenses. Motor vehicle expenses and the CRA are pretty picky. There's only certain things that you're allowed to deduct, and there are a lot of rules about it. If you are wondering if you can deduct expenses related to your vehicle, please contact me and we can talk about it offline. This additional information is likely not going to be applicable. So then once you have filled out the business amount of your home, you'll notice again, it gets input here. And so Sally has net income total related to her blog of $200 after going through her income and all of these deductions. So once you've gone through everything, we keep scrolling down. Finally, we have interest paid on student loans. Again, it's only interest, not your principal. So we're going to say student loan co. Amount of interest paid. You are going to get a slip with this. You are just going to enter that amount. Let's just make it easy and say that it's $1,200. Again, changes her return, increases her refund. And now we get to review and optimize. We're probably going to get a couple of errors come up. This red 4, this red 1 tells me that we have an error and we need to look at it. So what this is going to do is it's going to ask if you intend on filing a return for a prior year. Maybe you didn't know taxes in 2005, so you haven't filed your return. That's actually okay, but you want to make sure your returns are up to date. So if you have a return from a prior year that you need to file, you're going to go yes, and it's going to prompt you to file that return first. You're going to want to sign up for Simple Tax to make sure that you save your data so that next year all you have to do is log in and a lot of things are going to populate for you. Now there are errors. So we can say fix it, and it's going to take us here. Oh yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, not a valid social insurance number. That's fine. We can deal with that. It doesn't like that we don't have an address because that's required. And then this is our last error here. We don't have a postal code. Make sure you fill those things in, otherwise it's going to tell you that you haven't done it. And what it's going to say is that they have maximized your refund. So if you are married, there are certain credits that are best taken by different individuals. When you file your return as married, this is going to do it for you. And again, like I said, they're nerdy and funny. Click the arrow for the fascinating line-by-line detail. So this is actually what your return looks like. So it lists your employment income, your business income, your total income, so on and so forth. I like looking at this. You probably don't. That's cool. Again, it's just showing you how it's calculated. And then this is actually going to show you what the actual return looks like when it's filled out and sent to the CRA. There are lots of pages here. And if you're someone who ever did your return by hand, this looks like it. So then once you've done all of it and you've finished off all of your errors, there's going to be a little button here where you can click submit and your return will be net filed, and then you have filed your taxes. So I did go through a lot of this quite quickly, merely because it's not that interesting to watch somebody click between different windows and enter in numbers, but that's also just how simple it is to file your taxes. So again, I'm going to include a lot of additional information in the blog post and the show notes. There's going to be links and descriptions of the different forms that are used. I'm also going to include a downloadable link to this self-employment example so that you can input it with your own figures so that you can easily just pop those figures into the tax software. I'm also going to include links to my social media and my account.